She entered the room, and everyone fell silent. They mocked her simple dress, telling her, "You don't belong here." But she left a box on the stage, and everything changed. She was no longer the girl who had been belittled. She was someone coming to reclaim her name. This wasn't just revenge. It was a quiet revolution against the system. No invitations had arrived. She hadn't really expected them, though. But that day, Harper ironed her white shirt, carefully styled her hair, and walked all the way to the entrance of the room she hadn't stepped foot in for years. No one had invited her. But it was time to listen to the voice she'd suppressed for so long. What awaited her wasn't just a luxurious celebration, it was the ghosts of her past, the rejection of her bloodline, the weight of a surname. All of it was behind that door. When she stepped into the grand hall, it felt like time stopped. Crystal chandeliers, gold-framed paintings, porcelain smiles. Everyone turned to look, but no one recognized her, because Harper had never been in those official family photos. Her mother had passed away when she was young, and her father had sent her away to a relative in another city, calling it temporary, and then completely forgotten about her. The family had only brought her shame. But now, on the anniversary of her father's death at the memorial event, Harper was there to reclaim her name for the first time. As she struggled to walk through the room, she could hear the whispers. "Who's that girl? Why is she dressed so plainly?" While the other women wore silk dresses and diamonds, Harper's delicate cream-colored dress and worn leather bag looked ridiculous to them. But only one person noticed the concern behind those smiles: Lucas. Lucas was Harper's step-cousin. But when they were kids, he was the only one who read her books, secretly exchanged letters with her. While the other family members insulted her, calling her the farm girl, and wouldn't let her sit at the tables, Lucas had always been by her side. But years had passed, and a wall had been built between them. Now Lucas watched her from afar, gripping his drink like he was about to crush the glass, because the expression on Harper's face was a courage he had never known. Then the microphone came to life. Ben, the new head of the family, took the stage. The crowd quieted. "Today, we've gathered here to honor our father Richard's memory. The legacy of this family is not just wealth. It's tradition, nobility, and loyalty." While he spoke, Harper reached for her bag. Inside was a small, elegant box. She had never been able to give it to him while he was alive, because it was her father who had once told her she wasn't part of this family. But now, what was inside that box wasn't just a key to the past, it was a key to the future. When the speech ended, people went up to the stage to present their gifts. Harper silently approached. As the security tried to stop her, Lucas suddenly stepped forward. "I know her. Let her through." Those words surprised both the crowd and Harper. It was as if, for the first time in years, someone was recognizing her as someone. But she just nodded and placed the small box on the stage. Then she turned and started to walk away, ignoring the laughter behind her. But the expression on Ben's face when he opened the box backstage would change everything. Because inside the box wasn't just a letter, it was the DNA result, a handwritten will draft by Richard, and a necklace that belonged to Harper. These documents would reveal the truth that the family had hidden for years, proving that Harper wasn't just a stranger. She was the rightful heir. But for now, these were just silent threats. No one knew it, but that night, Harper was stepping into not just the hall, but a whole new battle. When she left the hall, the air was still warm, but Harper felt like ice inside. The weight on her shoulders seemed lighter, but the real battle was just beginning. She walked without quickening her steps because someone who had picked their dignity up from the ground would never run away. But inside, a small box was about to tear apart a huge world. Ben read the letter over and over again before closing the box. He tried to hide the trembling of his hands, but Elena, who came up to him, noticed everything. Elena, Ben's wife, was the one who had given Harper the coldest looks when she was a child. She had always believed that Ben, who was Richard's official heir for years, owed everything to the family, and she measured nobility in poses. Now, the expression on her husband's face as he stared at the box was like the beginning of the end for her. "It's just nonsense, right?" Elena said, but her voice wasn't reassuring. It was more threatening. Ben didn't answer. He took the box and went into the back room. Lucas was waiting for him, their arms crossed, standing in tense silence. He glanced at the papers on the table. Richard's handwriting. He recognized it. And the necklace Harper had always worn as a child? That was the only memory left from Richard's first wife. Lucas swallowed. This wasn't just a family scandal. This was the resurrection of a life that had been buried for years. Ben picked up the files. "You won't tell anyone?" "Not yet." "Not yet?" Lucas asked, frowning. "So, at some point you'll reveal it?" "Lucas, listen," Ben said. His voice softened, but his words carried a cold determination. "That girl doesn't belong to our world. Richard may have made a mistake, but we built this system this way. Everyone has their place. Hers was outside. Now she wants to come and claim the throne." "Throne?" Lucas laughed bitterly. "This isn't a throne, Ben. This is an apology from a father to his daughter." Meanwhile, Elena was handling the crisis inside. Smiling, she approached the guests, saying, "There's been a little mix-up." She added, "I think someone's crashed our special night." But everyone had sensed the truth. Harper's appearance on that stage wasn't just a disruption. The silence she carried, the cold determination in her eyes, wasn't doubt, it was a claim to what was rightfully hers. The next morning, the documents secretly taken from the scene were sent to Ben's private legal advisor. But there was a problem. When the advisor reviewed the files, he silently nodded. These documents are valid, and Richard had only passed away 3 days before updating his will. This information sent a cold wave of panic through Ben's veins, while Elena was visibly frightened for the first time. At that moment, she realized that Harper wasn't just a threat, she was a slap from the past. At that same time, Harper was sitting by the window of an old caravan, watching the sun. In her hands was an old journal from her mother. The pages were yellowed, the ink faded, but in every line, there was a truth. Her mother had thought she was loved by Richard, until she was seen as a mistake. That night, Harper read the sentence her mother had written long ago. "I will take my revenge not when they forget me, but when they ignore our daughter." Harper closed her eyes. This battle wasn't just for her anymore. Her mother had passed without seeing justice. But Harper, she had returned to bring that justice. And how ironic it was. The more the family ignored her, the more visible Harper became. The news spread in less than a day. A blog post written with vague language, followed by an anonymous social media post, and finally the documents leaked to the press. The headline, "Secret Heir Revealed," was first whispered in a corner of the business world. Then it quickly spread. No one was giving full names, but everyone knew who they were talking about. Harper. When Elena saw the notification on her phone while grabbing her morning coffee, her hands didn't tremble this time. Her nerves had gone beyond that. "This girl will shake not only our past but also our name," she muttered to herself. Then she opened her wardrobe and picked out a black suit. The war had begun, and now no mask would be enough. Ben, on the other hand, had the curtains in his office drawn. He didn't want to see anything. But the thing he was trying hardest to avoid seeing was his own reflection. Because he knew that girl, quietly growing in silence, was now colliding not only with the walls but with the very system he had built. At the same time, Lucas parked his old car in front of the caravan where Harper was staying. Harper greeted him at the door. She had a pile of documents in her hands, and her face showed neither anger nor a smile, just readiness. A will to stand tall no matter what came. "Did you give it to the press?" Lucas asked. "No," Harper replied. "But even if no one had, those documents would have come to light. I just decided not to wait." Lucas stepped inside and watched the steam rising from the old kettle. "You know those documents aren't enough. These people built everything on power, not blood. You can't approach them with emotions." Harper narrowed her eyes and handed him the notebook. "It's not just the documents I have. This journal. It's the only thing my mother left me. But inside, there are notes written in Richard's handwriting, records of my birth, and most importantly mentions of secret family meetings." Lucas's eyes widened. This would be a scandal. Harper shook her head. No, this is a cleansing. Meanwhile, inside the company building, a crisis meeting was underway in the conference room. Elena, her face unmasked, spoke with the authority of a commander in battle. Image loss, investor flight, reputation damage. A storm is coming that will swallow us. And this girl is at its center. The lawyer at the end of the table cleared his throat lightly. But there's truth to the documents, especially the will. We'll ignore it, Ben said coldly. We'll ignore it, rewrite it, and guide the media. That girl's past is murky. We are clear. But there was one thing they were wrong about. Harper wasn't just speaking with documents anymore. That day, through Lucas, she reached out to an old professor at the university, the academic institution where her mother had studied, which Richard had sponsored at the time. The documents from the archives there revealed the scholarship applications Richard had made for Harper, which had never been completed. Each one was dated, signed, and written with the hope that Richard would one day accept his daughter. The family thought they had closed all the doors. But Harper, she was finding new windows. And that evening, as she sat silently with Lucas in front of the caravan, looking at the stars, she said, I didn't ask for this war, but those who pushed me aside didn't just take away a name. They have to give me back my life. After a long silence, Lucas spoke a single sentence. And this time, you're not alone. That day, the newspapers finally printed her full name, Harper Klein. The inheritance war, the return of the forgotten girl, the silent heir to the throne. The headlines changed, but the message remained the same. This young woman was the living representation of a truth that had been unspoken behind those glass walls for years. And now, she hadn't just walked through the door, she had seated herself right at the heart of the system. But the family didn't sit idle. Just 24 hours after the first media reports, a smear campaign against Harper began. Anonymous sources claimed she had been involved in petty crimes, psychological issues, and financial troubles, all detailed in the news. On social media, fake followers were attacking Harper, telling her to know her place. The truth was no longer just a document, it was a battle of narratives. As Lucas watched these developments, he clenched his fists. In a family so used to crushing their own children, honesty almost feels like a crime, he told Harper one night. But Harper was calm, perhaps for the first time, because the louder those voices became, the clearer her inner voice became. This fight wasn't just for inheritance or money. It was the reckoning for being dismissed, belittled, and made to feel worthless because of one's past. Harper made her countermove silently. She didn't just send the documents to a lawyer. She also sent them to a television producer. But she didn't immediately accept the interview offer. First, she wanted to wait for the right timing in the place she would tell her story, because telling the truth also had its rhythm. That same day, the family's lawyers sent Harper an official invitation for a peace meeting. Lucas said, "It's a trap," Harper answered without blinking. "And I'm not here to fall into traps. I'm here to break them." On the day of the meeting, there was a long wait at the security gate when they arrived at the family's private estate. Even though Harper's name was on the list, the identity check was prolonged, as if she were still a stranger. But finally, the heavy iron gate opened. It felt as though the past was being unlocked. When she entered, Elena sat at one end of the table, and Ben sat at the other. There were lawyers, consultants, and cold, glass-like glares in the room. "All of this is tarnishing the family's reputation," Elena said. "We're offering you a suitable compensation and a confidentiality agreement. This way, everyone can find peace." Before Harper opened the file, she looked up. "What you call reputation is just a broken mirror behind a glass display. My story will not remain behind that glass." Ben became angry. Being family comes with responsibilities. Not everyone born gets included in the inheritance. Harper closed the file. But every person who's been disregarded will eventually find their place. The meeting ended. She rejected the settlement offer. She wasn't ready to speak to the press just yet because her plan was progressing through a different timing. When Harper returned, Lucas was waiting for her at the caravan. "I turned them all down," she simply said. Then she looked out the window. It's time to start speaking for myself, not for their lies. That night, as news about Harper aired on a television program, a single image on the screen changed everything. A home video from Harper's childhood, taken with her mother. In the background, Richard's voice could clearly be heard. "Harper, smile, my girl. This is your day. One day, I'll tell you everything." It was unknown who leaked the video, but now, everyone understood that Harper was not a rumor, she was the truth itself. That morning, for the first time, Harper didn't stay silent. She agreed to appear on the press. But it wasn't a regular interview, it was a controlled broadcast, pre-recorded, with only selected segments being aired. She chose the questions and gave uncensored answers. The studio was dark, but Harper's voice was clear. Every word she spoke was a reflection of not just her past, but the current system itself. "People are discussing my past, but my past is a school where I learned to stand on my own. Those people only showed me the latch on the outer door. I had to break that door down, because the key wasn't given to me, it was never given." When the video aired, only a few thousand people watched in the first hours. But then, a spark turned into a flame. Young women, those who grew up alone, the outcasts, those rejected for not being good enough. They all began to embrace this voice. Harper, in an instant, became more than just an heiress. She was turning into a symbol. She was the voice of the suppressed. Meanwhile, panic took over the family front. Ben gathered his press advisors and prepared an urgent statement. "The girl's going through an emotional period," they said. "The trauma from her past might have caused misinterpretations." But the public had already rejected this language. Now, everyone was sharing this line from Harper's video. "I don't want to hurt anyone, but I can't just stay silent in the middle of a system that has hurt me for years." This sentence was written on a protest banner, then sprayed on a street wall, and later worn on a t-shirt in the crowds. In the meeting room, Elena slammed her fist on the table. "This isn't a smear campaign. This is a revolution. And as long as we stay silent, it keeps growing." At that moment, one of the lawyers put the documents in front of her. "Public pressure is increasing. If this goes to court, we have a lot to lose." Ben was still arrogant. "People forget. The life of a scandal is 3 days." But this wasn't a scandal, it was a resistance. And Harper was walking, not just with documents or videos, but now with the voices of thousands of people behind her. That night, Lucas approached Harper quietly. "Are you scared?" he asked. Harper shook her head slightly. "I'm scared. But I was scared when I was excluded for years too. Just now. Now I have a way. Maybe not all the way, but at least a few steps further." Lucas handed Harper an envelope. "This is the notarized copy of your father's original will from his lawyer. He had kept it hidden all these years. But after the video went live, he couldn't deny his conscience anymore." Harper opened the envelope without trembling. There was only a hint of moisture in her eyes, because these documents had now left the door to her past permanently open. The second video aired that night, and it was about Harper's mother. She had applied for an educational scholarship, but it had been denied due to family suitability. The archive documents showed that Richard had covered the payment before Harper's birth, but then, with a sudden withdrawal, all support was canceled. This revealed both Richard's regret and Elena's influence. People no longer saw Harper as a lucky heir. They saw her as the one who had been pushed to the outside by the system, only to initiate the change from within. But this sense of victory would lead the family to play their last cards. Because the next morning, an official lawsuit was filed against Harper. The family had initiated legal proceedings against her. Claiming the documents were fake, she gained an unfair reputation through public manipulation and caused commercial damage. This was no longer a case of a name, it was a fight for survival. The courtroom was full. Although cameras weren't allowed, the crowd outside followed every development inside in real time via social media. People now saw Harper not as a figure, but as the symbol of the injustices they themselves had faced. And now, that woman who had been denied a seat for years was sitting tall at the table in front of the judge. On the plaintiff's side, Elena and Ben were seated with their army of lawyers. The trial was about the validity of the inheritance and whether Harper's claims were manipulative. But Harper's lawyer unexpectedly presented a document, a recorded will made by Richard just 3 days before his death, in front of a notary. This recording was like a seal on the previously hidden documents. Before playing the recording, the judge warned the room. This recording is a private confession. It should not have been made public, but all parties have agreed to accept it as evidence. When the play button was pressed, the room fell silent. If you're hearing this, it means I'm no longer here. Harper, this is for you. Maybe I couldn't come to you, I couldn't hug you. Maybe I was scared of losing my family, my name, my wife. But the most I lost was you. We've denied you. We've ignored you. But now, if you're not here, then I have no inheritance. This house, this last name, this system, it is only complete with you. When the recording ended, Elena's face was pale. The uncontrolled anger in her eyes was replaced with defeat. Ben lowered his head, unable to whisper a single word to his lawyer. But the trial didn't end there. The family continued their accusations that Harper had manipulated the documents. The credibility of a few former witnesses was questioned. The trial went on for days. Harper, however, showed up to court the same way every morning, a simple jacket, a bare face, and clarity in her eyes. Because now it wasn't about show, it was about stance. Lucas always sat in the back during the hearings. He was the only one who had believed in Harper from the very beginning. Now, he was transitioning from a silent supporter to a visible witness. On the final day, when he was called to the witness stand, he said, "I am a part of this family, but this last name doesn't justify ignoring someone." Harper didn't just want an inheritance. She wanted a life to be recognized. And she achieved that, not with documents, but with her own stance. The final words were given to Harper. She stood up. The silence in the room made her words even more powerful. "I'm not here to claim my name. Even if it wasn't given to me when I was born, no one can erase the values I carry. This may look like an inheritance case, but it's actually a stand for the voice of everyone who's been silenced. If I win today, I won't just win for myself, I'll win for everyone who's been excluded for years. But even if I lose, I won't let anyone erase me." The judge closed the session for a verdict. At the end of the day, the ruling was clear. Harper's inheritance rights were confirmed. The documents, the audio recording, the witnesses, and the public pressure had combined to ensure Harper's position was recognized not only legally, but socially as well. But Harper's victory didn't end in the courtroom. She transferred all her family shares to a charity foundation. She established a scholarship fund in her mother's name, providing education opportunities to children whose names are never mentioned. Now, Harper was not just a name, she was an action. In the final scene, Harper stood in front of the big house. The door was open, but this time she was there not to enter, but to turn around and walk away. Because her true inheritance wasn't inside that house, it was in the world she had built for herself after leaving it. Lucas came up to her. "Is it over?" Harper smiled. "No, but for the first time, I'm free." If you like this story, don't forget to follow us for more stories to come. Because sometimes, the strongest transformation starts from where we've been silent.